My name is Harriet, and at 35 years old, I thought I understood my sister Vanessa. Despite our complicated relationship, I always supported her, especially when she needed a new apartment. At her 27th birthday party, surrounded by her wealthy friends, I nervously handed her my special gift envelope containing 12 months of prepaid rent. Her face twisted as she read my card, then she tossed it into the trash. "Choose something better, and come back in a year," she snapped. I left without a word, my heart shattered. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from and hit subscribe if you have ever experienced such ingratitude from family. Growing up, Vanessa and I were different in almost every way possible. I was always the responsible one, the serious child who saved my allowance and planned for the future. Even at 10 years old, I would carefully budget my money, saving for books or small gifts for my family. My teachers often commented on my maturity and dependability. Meanwhile, Vanessa was the life of every party, outgoing and charismatic from the moment she could talk. She had a natural ability to charm adults and make friends easily, but she also developed expensive tastes early on. "Why save for tomorrow when you can enjoy today" became her unofficial motto by age 12. While I was tutoring neighborhood kids to earn extra money, Vanessa was begging our parents for designer clothes and the latest gadgets. They usually gave in, enchanted by her bright smile and persuasive arguments. Our parents divorced when I was 15, and Vanessa was 7. The split affected us differently, in ways that would shape our relationship for decades to come. I became even more independent and self-reliant, understanding that our mother now had to work longer hours to support us. I started cooking dinners, helping with housework, and essentially becoming a second caretaker for Vanessa. My little sister, however, responded by becoming more clingy and demanding. She feared abandonment and sought constant reassurance through material things. If Mom bought her a new dress or toy, it temporarily calmed her anxiety about being left. Our mother, overwhelmed with guilt about the divorce, found it nearly impossible to say no to Vanessa. "Harriet, please understand," Mom would say after buying Vanessa something expensive while denying me something practical. "Your sister needs extra support right now." I did understand, or at least I tried to, but a pattern was being established that would follow us into adulthood. The biggest sacrifice came during my senior year of high school. I had received a partial scholarship to an excellent university 300 miles away. It was my dream school with the exact program I wanted, but it would still require student loans and moving far from home. The night I received my acceptance letter, Mom sat me down for a serious conversation. "I know how much this means to you," she said, her eyes filled with tears. "But I need to ask something enormous. Would you consider the state college instead? With Vanessa struggling so much with the divorce still, I need your help at home." The state college was decent, but not exceptional. It was only 20 minutes from our house, allowing me to live at home and continue supporting my mother and sister. I could see the desperation in Mom's eyes, the exhaustion from working overtime and handling Vanessa's emotional outbursts. After a sleepless night, I deferred my dream school acceptance and enrolled locally. Throughout college, I worked multiple jobs while maintaining good grades. I waited tables in the mornings, attended classes in the afternoons, and did administrative work in the evenings. On weekends, I helped Vanessa with homework and tried to be the stable presence she needed. My social life was practically non-existent, and dating seemed like a luxury I could not afford. During this time, Vanessa's behavior became increasingly concerning. By 14, she was skipping classes and hanging out with older kids. By 16, she had been caught shoplifting twice. Each time, I was the one who left work to pick her up, who sat with her through lectures from store managers or guidance counselors, who tried to understand why she kept making these choices. "You do not get it, Harriet," she would say, rolling her eyes. "You have never had to struggle for attention. You are perfect at everything." The irony was painful. My entire life felt like one continuous struggle, but Vanessa only saw what she wanted to see. Despite everything, Vanessa was brilliant when she applied herself. Her standardized test scores were exceptional, and when she finally found motivation in her junior year, her grades improved dramatically. She received a full scholarship to an expensive private university on the other side of the country. I was genuinely happy for her even as I finished my own degree at the state college while working full-time. The day Vanessa left for college was emotional for all of us. Mom cried for hours, and I worried about how we would manage the household finances without my sister's drama constantly taking center stage. As it turned out, life became unexpectedly peaceful. I finished my degree with honors and finally had time to focus on building my career in financial consulting. Starting at an entry-level position, I worked tirelessly to prove myself. My practical experience with budgeting and financial planning gave me an edge, and within 3 years I had received 2 promotions. Finally, at 27, I moved into my own apartment and began building the independent life I had deferred for so long. Meanwhile, Vanessa called home primarily when she needed something. Extra money for spring break, trips, a new laptop when hers broke, emergency funds when she overspent her allowance. Each time our mother would call me in a panic. "I cannot afford to help her right now. Could you send her something just this?" Once Mom would plead. Of course, just this once happened every few months. I tried to establish boundaries, suggesting that Vanessa get a part-time job like I had done, but my suggestions were met with resistance from both of them. "You know how demanding her program is," Mom would defend her. "She cannot work and maintain her grades." I somehow managed to do both, but pointing this out only labeled me as bitter and unsupportive. So I continued sending money, paying for flights home, covering emergency expenses. Each time Vanessa would thank me profusely and promise to pay me back as soon as possible. Those repayments never materialized. Despite these frustrations, I was proud of my own achievements. By 30, I had paid off my student loans, established a healthy savings account, and earned a reputation as a skilled financial advisor. My clients appreciated my practical approach to money management, never knowing that my expertise was hard-won through years of managing my family's complicated finances. After graduating with honors, Vanessa surprised us by announcing she wanted to move to my city. I had mixed feelings about this decision. Part of me was excited to rebuild our relationship as adults, while another part worried that the old patterns would simply continue in closer proximity. "It will be different this time," Vanessa promised during a phone call. "I have grown up so much in college. Plus, there are amazing job opportunities in your city, and having you nearby would help me get established." Despite my reservations, I helped her research apartments and job openings. When she arrived with 6 suitcases and barely enough money for her first month's expenses, I let her stay in my guest room until she found her footing. "This is just temporary," she assured me. 2 weeks max. 2 weeks stretched into 2 months. Vanessa did secure a good entry-level position at a marketing firm, but her spending habits had not improved since college. She bought expensive work clothes, claiming they were necessary to make the right impression. She joined costly fitness classes and exclusive networking events. Each time I gently suggested budgeting, she would become defensive. "You do not understand the industry I am in," she would explain with exaggerated patience. "Appearances matter, connections matter. I cannot show up looking cheap or missing important events." When she finally moved into her own apartment, it was in an upscale building with amenities she did not need and could not afford. I expressed concern about the rent being nearly half her monthly income, but she dismissed my worries. "I will get promoted quickly," she said confidently. "This is an investment in my future." 3 months later, she called me in tears. She had maxed out 2 credit cards and could not make her rent payment. Could I help her just this once? Against my better judgment, I transferred enough money to cover the shortfall with the firm understanding that this was a loan, not a gift. "I will pay you back next month, I promise," she said. Next month came with another crisis, another reason why repayment would have to wait. This cycle continued until I stopped answering finance-related calls altogether. Instead, Vanessa started dropping by my apartment unannounced, usually with tears already streaming down her face. During one particularly dramatic visit, she confessed that she had been late on rent for 3 consecutive months and received an eviction notice. "They cannot do this to me," she sobbed. "Where am I supposed to go? All my things, my life is there." I took a deep breath and reminded myself that she was still my sister despite everything. "You will need to find a more affordable place," I said firmly. "I can help you look, but it needs to be within your actual budget." For once, Vanessa seemed to listen. We spent a weekend searching for apartments, and I insisted on joining her for viewings to prevent her from being swayed by unnecessary luxuries. We finally found a clean, basic, one-bedroom apartment in a safe neighborhood. The rent was reasonable, and the location offered a manageable commute to her job. "It is so plain," she said, looking around the empty rooms with obvious disappointment. "It is within your budget," I countered. "And it has everything you need." Reluctantly, she applied and was approved, though the landlord required a larger security deposit due to her eviction history. Again, I helped cover the cost, telling myself this would be the last time. Moving day was chaotic. Vanessa had accumulated far more possessions than could reasonably fit in her new, smaller space. She became increasingly agitated, as she realized she would need to downsize significantly. "This is impossible," she declared dramatically. "I cannot live like this." I spent hours helping her organize, donate items, and arrange furniture to maximize the space. By the end of the weekend, the apartment was functional and actually quite nice, though. Vanessa remained unconvinced. Around this time, something unexpected happened at work. Our team had exceeded our annual targets by a significant margin, resulting in substantial performance bonuses. My share was enough to make a real difference in my investment portfolio, or perhaps fund the vacation I had been postponing for years. As I stared at the deposit notification, another idea formed. Vanessa's birthday was approaching, and she was still struggling to adjust to her new financial reality. What if I used part of my bonus to give her some breathing room? If I covered her rent for a year, she could focus on paying down her credit card debt and learning to budget properly without the immediate pressure of monthly housing payments. The more I thought about it, the more perfect it seemed. This would not be another enablement of her bad habits, but a thoughtful gift that addressed her actual needs, while giving her time to develop financial responsibility. I called her landlord and arranged to prepay 12 months of rent, requesting a formal letter confirming the arrangement that I could present to Vanessa. When the letter arrived, I placed it in a simple but elegant envelope, along with a birthday card explaining the gift. I wrote about my hopes for her future and offered to help her create a financial plan during the coming year. This was not just a handout, I emphasized, but an opportunity for a fresh start. As Vanessa's birthday approached, I felt genuinely excited about my gift for the first time in years. This was not another last-minute purchase or emergency bailout. This was thoughtful, practical, and exactly what she needed. I imagined her relief, her gratitude, perhaps even a turning point in our relationship. For once, I believed I had found the perfect way to help my sister. Vanessa had planned her 27th birthday celebration at an upscale rooftop bar downtown. When I arrived carefully carrying my card and gift envelope, I was immediately struck by how out of place I felt. The venue featured minimalist furniture, ambient lighting, and panoramic city views that surely came with a premium price tag. Servers circulated with trays of colorful cocktails and artisanal appetizers that probably cost more than a reasonable dinner. Most striking were Vanessa's friends, all impeccably dressed in designer clothes, exchanging air kisses and loud compliments. I recognized a few faces from social media, but had met very few in person despite Vanessa living in my city for nearly a year now. I smoothed down my simple black dress, suddenly conscious that it was neither new nor notably fashionable. "Harriet, you made it," Vanessa spotted me from across the room and waved enthusiastically. She looked stunning in a sequin dress I had never seen before, her hair and makeup professionally done. As I approached, I expected an introduction to the small group she was chatting with, but instead she simply squeezed my arm and continued her conversation about an exclusive industry event she had attended. I stood awkwardly for several minutes before excusing myself to get a drink. At the bar, I calculated the probable cost of this party and winced internally. Based on the venue and number of guests, Vanessa must have spent at least $2,000, money she definitely did not have. I wondered if she had opened yet another credit card to fund this extravagance. Throughout the evening, I tried to engage with Vanessa's friends, but our conversations remained superficial. When I mentioned my work in financial consulting, eyes would glaze over or quickly find reasons to refill their drinks. It became increasingly clear that Vanessa had told them very little about me, and what she had shared was likely unflattering. "Your sister seems so sensible," one woman said, with a thin smile somehow, making it sound like an insult. After dinner and several rounds of drinks, the time for presents arrived. Vanessa clapped excitedly as she was ushered to a central table piled with elegantly wrapped gifts. I hung back slightly watching as she opened box after box of luxury items, a designer handbag, an expensive perfume set, artisanal spirits, and even a pair of ridiculously high-priced sunglasses. With each gift, Vanessa squealed with delight, hugging the giver and making a show of how perfect and thoughtful each item was. I clutched my envelope tighter, suddenly nervous about how my practical gift would be received in this atmosphere of conspicuous consumption. Finally, there were no more wrapped packages, and Vanessa looked around expectantly. Taking a deep breath, I stepped forward. "I have something for you," I said, handing her the envelope. Vanessa took it with a slight furrow in her brow, clearly expecting something small like a gift card. The envelope was weighty, containing the official letter from her landlord along with my card. "What is this?" she asked, already sounding disappointed as she tore it open. I smiled encouragingly. "Open it and see." The room had grown quieter as people watched, cocktails in hand, curious about the plain envelope after all the elaborate packages. Vanessa pulled out the card first, reading my message quickly before extracting the official letter. "I paid your rent for the next 12 months, I explained, filling the awkward silence. "Your apartment is completely covered until next year. I thought it would give you a chance to catch up on other expenses and start saving without worrying about housing costs." I had imagined relief, perhaps tears of gratitude. What I saw instead was Vanessa's face transforming from confusion to embarrassment to rage in the span of seconds. Her cheeks flushed dark red as she stared at the letter. "You paid my rent?" she asked incredulously, her voice rising. "Like I am some charity case who cannot afford to live without your help." "No, that is not what I meant at all," I started, but she cut me off. "Do you have any idea how humiliating this is?" She gestured wildly at her friends who were watching with uncomfortable fascination. "Everyone giving me beautiful, thoughtful gifts, and my own sister hands me a reminder that she thinks I am a financial failure." "Vanessa, that is not fair," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite my racing heart. "This is a substantial gift. I wanted to help in a meaningful way." She gave a harsh laugh. "Help, you want to control me, like always. Poor little Vanessa cannot manage on her own, so big sister Harriet has to step in and save the day." Her words stung especially because they inverted the reality of our relationship so completely. Before I could respond, she crumpled the letter and threw both it and my card into a nearby trash bin. "Choose something better and come back in a year," she announced loudly, turning away from me toward her friends, who had begun to whisper among themselves. The room felt suddenly airless. Several people were openly staring now, while others pretended great interest in their drinks or the city view. I stood frozen, the full weight of the public humiliation settling over me like a physical burden. Without another word, I turned and walked toward the exit. No one called after me or tried to stop me. As the elevator doors closed, I caught a final glimpse of Vanessa already laughing with her friends, my gift and our relationship discarded as easily as the envelope in the trash. The drive home passed in a blur, my vision clouded with unshed tears as I navigated through late-night traffic gripped tight on the steering wheel. The radio played softly in the background, some cheerful pop song that felt like it was mocking my pain. I switched it off, preferring silence. By the time I reached my apartment, the initial shock had given way to a deep, aching hurt that settled in my chest like a stone. I kicked off my shoes in the entryway and sank onto my couch in the dark, finally allowing the tears to fall freely. What hurt most was not just the rejection of my gift, but the complete dismissal of my intentions. The gift represented a significant portion of my bonus money I had earned through years of hard work and sacrifice. More than that, it had been given with genuine love and concern for Vanessa's well-being. To have it treated as an insult, as some kind of power play, twisted everything I thought I knew about our relationship. As I sat in my darkened living room, memories flooded back from throughout our lives. The time I skipped my senior class trip to help pay for Vanessa's middle school band instrument. The summer internship I turned down because Mom needed help with Vanessa at home. The countless emergency transfers of $20 here, $50 there, building into thousands over the years that were never acknowledged, much less repaid. Had Vanessa ever truly appreciated any of it? Or had she simply come to expect my support as her due, resenting me for providing what she felt entitled to receive? My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from our mother. Just heard what happened. Why would you embarrass your sister like that at her party? You know how important appearances are to her. Call me. I stared at the message in disbelief. Of course, Vanessa had already called Mom with her version of events. And of course, Mom had immediately taken her side, as she always did. I switched my phone to silent and tossed it aside. Sleep eluded me that night. I scrolled through old photos on my laptop, examining pictures of Vanessa and me through the years. In almost every image, I could see the dynamic that had defined us. Me, the responsible caretaker, and Vanessa, the carefree recipient of everyone's attention and concern. When had this pattern become so entrenched? And why had I allowed it to continue into adulthood? Around 3 a.m, I found myself looking at my bank statements, tallying the financial support I had provided to Vanessa just in the past year. The total was staggering, nearly $15,000 in loans that we both knew would never be repaid. Add to that the prepaid rent and I had given my sister more than many parents provide to their adult children. As dawn broke, I reached a painful clarity. My help was not helping. By constantly bailing Vanessa out, I was preventing her from experiencing the natural consequences of her choices. And worse, my assistance was interpreted not as generosity but as judgment, feeding a resentment that was poisoning our relationship. With shaking hands, I opened my laptop and composed an email to Vanessa's landlord. I explained that there had been a misunderstanding, and I needed to cancel the arrangement for the prepaid rent. I requested that only the current month remain paid, with the remainder of the funds returned to my account. After sending the email, I felt a complex mixture of emotions. Guilt, certainly knowing that Vanessa would face immediate housing insecurity. Relief, surprisingly, at setting a boundary that was long overdue. And underneath it all, a profound sadness for what our relationship had become. My phone had accumulated several missed calls and increasingly angry texts from both Vanessa and our mother. I ignored them all and called in sick to work for the first time in years. Then I did something I had never allowed myself before. I scheduled an appointment with a therapist. I need to understand why I keep sacrificing myself for people who do not appreciate it, I told the receptionist, and I need to learn how to stop. As I finally drifted into an exhausted sleep that morning, one thought provided a small measure of peace. For the first time in our adult lives, I was treating Vanessa not as a dependent child but as the grown woman she claimed to be. Perhaps that was the most loving thing I could do for both of us. For the next 3 days, I maintained my digital distance from my family. I silenced notifications, deleted voicemails without listening to them, and focused on regaining my emotional equilibrium. At work, I threw myself into projects, grateful for the structured distraction of spreadsheets and client meetings. In the evenings, I began reading books about family dynamics and codependency, each page illuminating patterns I had never been able to name before. My first therapy session was both uncomfortable and revelatory. The therapist, a calm woman named Dr. Powell, listened without judgment as I described my relationship with Vanessa and our mother. "It sounds like you have been cast in the role of family rescuer," she observed. "Have you considered what would happen if you stepped out of that role?" The question haunted me. Who would I be, if not the responsible one, the fixer, the provider? I had built my entire identity around being dependable, often at the cost of my own needs and desires. On the 4th day, I finally checked my messages. There were 23 texts and 15 missed calls from Vanessa. their tone evolving from indignant to panicked as days passed. The most recent sent that morning made my stomach clench. The landlord says the rent is not paid anymore. What did you do? I got a 3-day notice. Call me now. There were also several messages from our mother, each more accusatory than the last. According to her, I was being petty and vindictive, punishing Vanessa for a momentary lapse in gratitude. The final voicemail included a threat: if I did not fix this situation immediately, I should not expect to be welcomed at family gatherings in the future. Instead of calling either of them, I sent Vanessa a brief factual text. I canceled the prepaid rent arrangement after you made it clear the gift was unwanted. This month is paid. Future months are your responsibility. As they always have been. Her response was immediate and explosive, a stream of texts alternating between rage and desperation. I was cruel, heartless, manipulative. How could I do this to her? Where was she supposed to find rent money in 3 days? Did I want her to be homeless? I did not respond further, though. Each message landed like a physical blow. That evening, my doorbell rang repeatedly, followed by pounding on my door and Vanessa's voice calling my name. I sat motionless on my couch, lights off, until she eventually gave up and left. 2 days later, I received an email from Vanessa's landlord, confirming that the prepaid rent had been refunded to my account minus the current month. He also mentioned with professional neutrality that eviction proceedings would begin if the tenant did not make payment arrangements immediately. I felt a wave of nausea reading this, imagining Vanessa packing her belongings under duress. I had to remind myself repeatedly that this was the natural consequence of her choices, not mine. She had a good job. She had friends with expensive tastes who seemed to value her company. She had options that did not include me opening my wallet yet again. True to the landlord's word, Vanessa was evicted exactly 1 week after her birthday party. I learned this not from her directly, but from a mutual acquaintance who mentioned seeing Vanessa moving her things into a friend's apartment. She seemed really stressed, the acquaintance said cautiously. Mentioned something about a family emergency and financial difficulties. Is everything okay? I gave a non-committal response, unwilling to air our family drama but also refusing to accept blame for a situation Vanessa had created. Later that evening, I received a text from an unknown number that turned out to be Vanessa's friend, Olivia. Your sister is staying on my couch right now because she has nowhere else to go. I thought you should know since you are her family. She is too proud to tell you herself. This was clearly meant to shame me into action, but it had the opposite effect. If Vanessa had wealthy friends willing to take her in temporarily, she was far from destitute. And the fact that she was sending her friends to guilt-trip me rather than taking responsibility only confirmed that I had made the right decision. Still, I could not help worrying about her. Despite everything, she was my sister, and decades of caring for her could not be switched off overnight. I found myself checking her social media accounts looking for clues about her situation. Surprisingly, her online presence remained upbeat. She posted photos at restaurants and bars documenting nights out with friends as if nothing had changed. Only someone who knew her well would notice the subtle signs of strain. The same outfits appearing more frequently. The locations becoming slightly less exclusive. The forced brightness of her smile. 2 weeks after the eviction, I received another update, this time from our mother. Vanessa has been sleeping on friends' couches, she said accusingly during a brief phone call. None of her so-called friends will let her stay more than a few days. She cannot keep bouncing around like this. You need to help her. What about you? I asked, surprising myself with the directness of the question. Could she stay with you for a while? There was a long pause. You know, I do not have the space, she finally said, which was true. After the divorce, Mom had downsized to a small, 1-bedroom condo. Besides, she needs to be in the city for her job. Then perhaps she should find a more affordable apartment, I suggested. Or a roommate situation. There are options that do not involve me paying her rent. I cannot believe how cold you have become, Mom replied before hanging up. That night I cried again, but the tears felt different. They were not just for the current situation, but for all the years I had spent trying to earn approval by taking care of everyone except myself. I was grieving not only the relationship I had with my sister and mother, but also the relationship I might have had if healthier boundaries had been established long ago. As difficult as this period was, I began to notice subtle shifts in my own life. Without the constant drain of Vanessa's emergencies, I had more energy for my own pursuits. I joined a book club I had been interested in for months. I reconnected with friends I had neglected. I even went on a date for the first time in years, a coffee meeting with a kind man from my office building that led to pleasant conversation and tentative plans for dinner. Small changes, perhaps, but they represented something monumental. I was finally creating space for my own life to flourish. 3 weeks after Vanessa's birthday, I returned home from work to find her sitting on the floor outside my apartment door. She looked different than I had ever seen her. Her typically perfect appearance was disheveled, her designer clothes replaced by simple jeans and a plain t-shirt. Her eyes were red-rimmed either from crying or lack of sleep. Possibly both. She stood when she saw me, arms crossed defensively across her chest. "We need to talk," she said, her voice hoarse. I unlocked my door and gestured for her to enter, mentally preparing myself for another emotional manipulation. But as we sat across from each other in my living room, I was determined to maintain the boundaries I had been working so hard to establish. "You ruined my life," she began without preamble. "I lost my apartment. I have been sleeping on couches for weeks. My friends are starting to avoid my calls because they are tired of me asking for help." I took a deep breath. "I am sorry you are struggling," I said carefully. "But I did not create this situation." She looked at me incredulously. "You canceled the rent payments. You knew I could not afford it on such short notice." "Vanessa," I said as gently as I could, "you rejected my gift. Publicly and definitively, you threw it in the trash and told me to come back with something better. It was a party. I was embarrassed. You could not have given me jewelry or something normal like everyone else." This was so typically Vanessa that I almost laughed despite the tension. "The gift I gave you was worth far more than any jewelry I could afford. It was practical, thoughtful, and addressed a real need in your life." "Well, now I have an even bigger need," she countered. "I need a place to stay until I can find a new apartment. Olivia wants me out by the weekend." I had been expecting this request and had already decided on my answer. "You cannot stay here," I said firmly. "But I am happy to help you look for affordable housing options or connect you with roommate search websites." Her face darkened. "So that is it? After all these years, you are just going to abandon me when I need you most?" Before I could respond, there was another knock at my door. When I opened it, our mother stood in the hallway, her expression a mixture of worry and accusation. "I knew I would find you both here," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "We need to sort this out as a family." What followed was one of the most difficult conversations of my life. Mom immediately aligned herself with Vanessa, reinforcing the narrative that I was being cruel and unfeeling. When I tried to explain the years of financial support I had provided, both of them minimized my contributions. "That is what family does," Mom insisted. "We help each other without keeping score." "But it has only ever gone one way," I pointed out. "When have either of you supported me financially or otherwise?" This question was met with uncomfortable silence, broken eventually by Vanessa's scoff. "You have never needed help. You have always been perfect with your savings and your responsible job and your spotless credit." "Those things did not happen by accident," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "They happened because I worked multiple jobs through college. Because I budget carefully and live within my means. Because I make difficult choices every day about what I can and cannot afford." "Not everyone can be a financial genius like you," Vanessa shot back. "This is not about financial genius," I insisted. "This is about basic adult responsibility. You make good money, Vanessa. You simply choose to spend it on things you want rather than things you need, and then expect me to cover the difference." The argument continued in circles, with accusations and defenses from all sides. Finally, exhausted, I stood up. "I love you both," I said firmly. But I am no longer willing to enable behaviors that are harmful to Vanessa and to our relationship. I will not provide money. I will not offer housing. What I will offer is support in finding solutions that Vanessa can sustain independently. Mom left shortly after, disappointed and angry. Vanessa stayed longer, cycling through tactics. I now recognized clearly anger, guilt manipulation, and finally, when nothing worked, a grudging consideration of my offer to help her find a sustainable living situation. By the end of the evening, we had created a list of affordable apartment options and roommate search resources. It was not the immediate rescue she had hoped for, but it was a path forward that did not depend on my bank account. The next day, I received an unexpected call from my father. We had maintained a cordial relationship after the divorce, speaking occasionally but never particularly close. He had heard about the situation from Mom, but his perspective surprised me. "I think you are doing the right thing," he said without preamble. "It is about time someone in this family let Vanessa face reality." His words brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "It does not feel right," I admitted. "I keep wondering if I am being cruel." "Sometimes love looks like standing back and letting someone figure things out for themselves," he said. "I wish I had learned that lesson sooner with both of you girls. And with your mother, for that matter." He went on to share his own regrets about the patterns established in our family. How he had worked long hours to provide the lifestyle Mom wanted. How he had let her handle the day-to-day parenting without enough involvement. How he had seen the unhealthy dynamics developing, but had not known how to address them. "Vanessa was 5 when I realized she had learned to manipulate your mother perfectly," he said. "And by then it seemed too late to change course." This conversation with my father provided a perspective I had never considered, placing our family dynamics in a broader context. It did not excuse Vanessa's behavior or my mother's enabling, but it helped me understand how these patterns had developed over generations. In the weeks that followed, Vanessa was forced to make significant changes. Unable to find friends willing to host her indefinitely, and with our mother's small condo, genuinely too small for both of them, she had to quickly find a new living situation. She ended up sharing an apartment with 2 other young women in a much less fashionable neighborhood than she was accustomed to. More significantly, she had to take on additional work to afford even this more modest arrangement. She began freelancing on weekends, using her marketing skills to help small businesses with their social media presence. It was unglamorous work compared to her day job at the trendy agency, but it provided the additional income she desperately needed. Each step was difficult for her, each adjustment accompanied by complaints and occasional backsliding into old patterns of expecting rescue. But gradually, almost imperceptibly, something began to change. Necessity became, if not exactly the mother of virtue, at least the catalyst for growth. 6 months after Vanessa's disastrous birthday party, my life had transformed in ways both subtle and profound. The boundaries I established had initially felt like walls constructed out of necessity, but isolating me from my family. Over time, they evolved into something healthier, clearly marked lines that everyone, including myself, could recognize and respect. My weekly therapy sessions continued helping me untangle the complex web of family dynamics that had shaped so much of my life. I learned to identify the difference between genuine generosity and codependent enabling. I practiced saying no without guilt and yes without resentment. Most importantly, I began to understand that taking care of myself was not selfish but essential. With the emotional and financial burden of constantly rescuing Vanessa lifted, I discovered energy for pursuits long neglected. I joined a hiking group that explored local trails every weekend. I enrolled in a photography class I had been interested in for years. I even started dating more actively, learning to be vulnerable with others in ways that felt healthy rather than depleting. The relationship with James, the kind man from my office building, developed slowly but steadily. He was thoughtful and self-sufficient with a quiet confidence I found deeply attractive. On our 5th date, when I cautiously shared some of my family history, his response was refreshingly straightforward. "It sounds like you have been carrying everyone else's responsibilities for a long time," he observed. "No wonder you are tired." That simple acknowledgement, free of judgment or advice, felt like permission to set down burdens I had not even realized I was still carrying. My relationship with my mother remained strained but was slowly improving. After several weeks of minimal contact following the confrontation in my apartment, she reached out with a tentative olive branch. "I have been thinking about what you said," she admitted during a brief phone call, "about support only going one way. I cannot say you are wrong." It was not exactly an apology, but it was a start. We began having coffee together occasionally, our conversations carefully avoiding the topic of Vanessa at first, then gradually addressing it with increasing honesty. During one such meeting, Mom surprised me by sharing her own insecurities. "After your father left, I was terrified of failing as a parent," she confessed. "Vanessa was so emotional, so demanding. It seemed easier to give her what she wanted than to deal with the tantrums. I told myself I was protecting her from more trauma, but maybe I was just protecting myself from difficult parenting." This glimpse into her perspective did not erase the years of unequal treatment, but it helped me understand it better. She had been doing the best she could with the emotional tools she had available, just as I had been. As for Vanessa, her journey proved more transformative than I could have imagined. The first few months were rough. She called occasionally, usually when facing some new financial challenge, testing whether my boundaries would hold. Each time I offered practical advice instead of money, suggestions instead of solutions. Gradually, the nature of her calls changed. She shared small victories, negotiating a lower rate on her credit card, finding an affordable furniture piece for the apartment, cooking meals at home instead of eating out. Each achievement was delivered with a mixture of pride and lingering resentment, as if she still wanted me to know how difficult this new lifestyle was for her. 4 months after moving into the shared apartment, she was laid off from her marketing job during a company restructuring. In the past, this would have triggered an immediate financial crisis and frantic calls for help. Instead, she threw herself into her freelance work, expanding her client base and even raising her rates as her portfolio grew. "It is actually working out better than the agency job," she admitted during one of our now regular phone conversations. "I make my own schedule, and I can be pickier about the clients I take on." The real breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, nearly 6 months to the day after her birthday. My phone rang while I was at work, and I answered to hear Vanessa's voice unusually subdued. "Do you have time to meet for coffee after work?" she asked. "There is something I need to say to you." We met at a simple cafe near my office, nothing like the upscale establishments she used to prefer. She was already seated when I arrived, 2 cups of coffee on the table, including mine, prepared exactly how I liked it. "I owe you an apology," she said as soon as I sat down, the words coming out in a rush as if she had rehearsed them but was afraid she might lose her nerve. "A real one, not just for the birthday thing but for everything. For taking you for granted all these years. For expecting you to fix my problems. For not appreciating what you were trying to do for me." I sat in stunned silence as she continued explaining how the past months had forced her to confront realities about herself she had always avoided. How she had begun to recognize patterns in her other relationships that mirrored what had happened between us. How she had started keeping a budget for the first time in her life and discovered a sense of accomplishment in managing her own finances. "The thing is," she said, looking down at her coffee, "no one has ever believed I could handle things on my own. Not Mom, not my friends, not even me. Except you. You always tried to teach me, and I always resented you for it because it was easier than trying." Tears filled my eyes as I reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "I always knew you were capable," I said softly. "I just did not know how to help you see it too." We talked for hours that afternoon, more honestly than we ever had before. About our childhood, our parents, the dynamics that had shaped us both. About her new, more modest lifestyle and my slowly expanding horizons. About the possibility of building a relationship based on mutual respect rather than financial dependence. As we prepared to leave, Vanessa handed me an envelope. For a moment, my heart sank, thinking she was asking for money after all. Instead, when I opened it, I found a check for a small amount along with a handwritten note. This is the first installment, she had written. I cannot repay everything at once, but I can start. Thank you for believing in me enough to stop rescuing me." The amount was symbolic rather than significant, but its meaning was immeasurable. It represented not just a financial acknowledgement, but a fundamental shift in how Vanessa saw herself and our relationship. In the months that followed, our family began a slow healing process. We established new traditions like a monthly dinner, where everyone contributed something to the meal. We practiced more open communication with varying degrees of success but consistent effort. Most importantly, we began to recognize and name the unhealthy patterns that had defined us for so long, the first step toward changing them. Today, nearly a year after that fateful birthday party, Vanessa lives in a small but charming apartment she can comfortably afford. Her freelance business has grown steadily, allowing her to be selective about clients and projects. She still enjoys nice things but has learned to save for them rather than expecting immediate gratification. As for me, I have discovered that setting boundaries does not diminish love but clarifies it. By stepping back from the role of family rescuer, I created space for authentic connections based on mutual respect rather than dependency. My relationship with James continues to deepen, all the more meaningful because it is freely chosen rather than another obligation to fulfill. The most profound lesson I have learned through this journey is that true love sometimes means allowing people to face the consequences of their choices. It means trusting them enough to find their own solutions rather than imposing yours. It means believing that they can survive disappointment and emerge stronger from challenges. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give those we love is not protection from life's difficulties, but faith in their ability to overcome them. Have you ever had to step back and let someone you love face the consequences of their actions? Was it as difficult for you as it was for me? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more tales of family dynamics and personal growth. And remember, setting healthy boundaries is not selfish. It is an act of love for both yourself and others. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find the courage to establish the boundaries you need in your own relationships.